Hi, and welcome to Dark Window. I'm your host, Jim Mann. Here on this program, I will be talking with many of the leading investigators, researchers, and authors on the topics of UFOs, UAPs, alien abductions, extraterrestrials, and a host of many other fascinating and related topics. So please join me and my guest for the next hour as we reach out. This is Dark Window on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. And hello, everyone, and welcome to Dark Window. I am your host, Jim Mann, and here in the studio with me today is another very special person, and it's her second time back, is Nancy Rynes. Now, Nancy is an inspirational speaker. She's an artist. She's a scientist. She's the author of several books, Awakening from the Light, Messages from Heaven, and Walking in the Light. Books detailing the lessons that she learned from two near-death experiences. She refers to herself as a spiritual explorer, and we're going to get into that a little bit more than we did last time. So Nancy has been featured on NBC's Today Show. She's been on Netflix series Surviving Death. She is a popular keynote speaker at conferences and radio programs across the country. Now, she was on one with Dr. Eben Alexander in Vail, Colorado, the symposium that they had up there a few years ago. Nancy has been a strong proponent for bridging the gap between science and spirituality. I think that's very important, something we all need to really start understanding. She's known for her fun-loving, lighthearted, kind of girl next door demeanor. Nancy loves teaching others how to live a more purposeful and joyful and creative and inspired life. So, Nancy, welcome to Dark Window. It's glad to have you back for the second time. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
So, how are things going down there in Tucson?
Oh, it's awesome. This is the good weather season. We
Yeah,
are
it is,
in
isn't it?
amazing, beautiful weather. I'm loving getting outside and hiking and just
Oh,
enjoying.
yeah, it's hiking season again, isn't
It
it?
is, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
45 degrees in the morning, but it goes up to 75. It's
Yep,
just,
that's perfect.
that's
It's so
perfect, isn't it?
perfect.
Well, okay. It's good to have you back. Last time we talked about your near-death experience, your NDE, which was an amazing story, and the feedback that we had received here on the Dark Window was nothing but positive. You're a very credible lady, and I'm glad you're here with us. Um, I'm going to start off with this question here to get things going. Um, has your outlook on life or your approach on life changed since your near-death experience? And if it has, tell us how things have changed.
Yeah, so it's completely different.
I'll bet.
Before I'll kind of try to lay it out like how I was functioning before. It was I was in a state where I was anxious most of the time. I was a very fearful person, very closed, like closed off, and
Mhm.
which you don't want to be if you honestly you don't want to be that way if you're a scientist. But I was very closed off, kind of in all aspects of my life, and very protective of my own personal space, like not wanting to really make a lot of connections with people. Really, just not in a good place, a good place in my life, and also just like super skeptical and almost judgmental about people who were exploring spiritually, who were open to you know other things happening in this world besides what we can see and touch.
Right. Yeah.
And that's really shifted. One of the things that I was super fearful of, and I think this is really important to call out, and it's so normal, um, especially for people who are skeptical of spiritual anything. Um, I was terrified of dying. Like, no kidding. It would sometimes wake me up in the middle of the night and I would just shake in terror at the thought of death. Like that's how afraid I was of death. And that fear of death really colored my life. When you're that afraid of something, it kind of hobbles you. It's like putting shackles on, and it just held me back in so many different areas of my life. And what happened was after this, especially after the first NDE, that main one that we talked about last time, that fear was completely removed. Like that fear of death, gone. It was absolutely gone. And what that allowed me to do is really live life. And I sort of like dove into life in a way that I hadn't ever before. Much more open, obviously, much more open to spiritual things. I mean, I'd gone through like, you know, the spiritual fire, if you will, that trial by fire. So I was really open to that now and very inquisitive, and questioning, and not trying not to be judgmental or dogmatic about anything, just like sucking up all this information and trying to process it. Um, but the fear was gone, and when that fear was gone, it was like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders, and I felt like I could really live. The other thing that I noticed, and this took a little while, after my that first NDE, I was much calmer, like just in a calm state internally for most of the time. Like before, I was anxious and agitated. That was gone. Like I was like
Right.
Zen all the time. That was Zen Nancy, and I'm still that way. And my friends even commented on it. Now they noticed it quicker than I did. That they saw that in me before I even noticed it. But that zen, kind of that zen feeling, it just has gone deeper and deeper. Like it's grown, it hasn't gone away. And so I'm sort of on it more, a much more even keel.
Right.
I'm less easily offended. It's like whatever, I'm in that unattached state that a lot of Buddhists talk about. Like you're not attached to your emotions. You might have them, but those don't define me anymore, which is great because now, my life is a lot more even, and I'm very less. I still go through emotional states, don't get me wrong, but my highs and lows are much, much calmer now. And that's, I think, the biggest difference that I've seen is is
So
that.
it's kind of like, what's that old saying? Uh, Life is full of stuff, and we always, but don't stress the small stuff, and it's all small stuff. I wish I wish I could make myself believe that.
Yeah.
I go to
It
work and get
feels
all worked up
big.
about stuff at work, and I come home and I realize, I've got a life. I've got a family. I've got things that really matter. So
Yeah.
why am I getting worked up at work? Why do I
Yeah.
let some little thing like who misplaced this tool or something like that? Well, Nancy, was it just the NDE that helped you make your shift, or was there other stuff involved? Was it just the NDE?
Yeah, a lot of people have the misconception that you have a near-death experience or something like it. There are other things that can happen too, but they think you have one of these extraordinary experiences, and all of a sudden you're enlightened, and that's so far from the truth.
Right.
It's basically like for me, I liken it to a door opening, and the door to a better life, the door to a more connected and inspired life opens to you, certainly when you have an experience like this. But you have to walk through it, and you have to keep walking, once you're on the other side of it, because it's a process. You don't have to have a crazy experience like mine in order to cross through that door either. You can do it on your own without getting hit by a truck. You don't have to go through that.
You
But
don't have to get run over by an SUV
no,
and miss out.
I don't recommend it. Trust me, it's
Yeah.
just not good. But after that, I knew, even when I was still in the hospital. So I was in the hospital for 2 weeks after the accident, and even during that time, there we go.
Wow, you're busted
Yeah,
up there.
I was pretty
That's a whole
busted up.
body. That's like a whole body brace you've got on there.
Yeah, I had a neck brace on and then a a torso brace. So basically I couldn't move my spine at all, which is the point.
But is that a smile I see on your face up
Yeah,
there?
I thought it was just cool. You know, this is post NDE, so I was like
Okay.
riding that high, you know, still.
Yeah.
Um, but my niece actually took that picture. She's a nurse and she was in there
Okay.
trying to make me feel better. But but even during that first 2 weeks, I knew that I had a choice. It felt like a door had opened for me, but I would still have to do a lot of work personally in order to almost really continue to open the gift that that NDE was. And I even early on, I viewed it as a gift, as hard as it was. And I people look at that picture and they're like, "How can you view that as a gift?" But I had to, you know, I had to look at that like an opportunity. That
Now,
was an
how long
opportunity.
I'm sorry, how long were you in this condition right here with all these braces and the walker, the cane, the stick? How long were you in that condition?
Yeah, so they thought I would be in that getup right there that you see for about they thought I'd be in that for about 16 weeks or more, maybe 20. It's normally like 4 to 5 months, to heal up. They thought it was gonna take about 4 months to heal all that stuff up. They said maybe as early as 12 weeks, you know, but mostly we're thinking 16. And I had all that stuff off in 4. So
Wow. Now we're talking about what? A broken arm, broken ribs,
The arm was not broken, it was actually the collarbone
oh,
that
the
was
collarbone.
broken. They were trying to immobilize the collarbone, and then I had 5 ribs on my left side, so right there where you see the arm cast.
Right.
Um, those 5 of those ribs were kinda broken in multiple places, they were just crushed,
Wow.
and it punctured a lung. I punctured that lung over there, and, then my sternum was cracked and my pelvis was cracked. But most of the broken bones were my neck and back, and they were a mess. So it wasn't just the main vertebral column, it was all of those, like, prongs or processes, you know, that go off the side of the vertebrae
Yeah.
and off the back. Those were all cracked. I mean, they were a mess, and
And so
so
do you attribute this rapid recovery, to just the fact that you were number 1, you were a healthy person, you rode your bike and you exercised a lot, and you also came back with a whole new sense of purpose and a sense of life, and with that kind of
yeah.
attitude, do you think all of that kinda helped, hasten the whole healing
Yeah.
process?
I think, you know, certainly being relatively fit. I mean, I
Mhm.
wasn't like an Olympic athlete or anything, but I did bike and hike a lot. That helped. Eating well helped. Like I didn't eat any junk.
Yeah.
And I was eating a lot of protein from my doctor's recommendations. But I think that you're right that the real genesis of that healing, that rapid healing, was having had that experience of going through this spiritual opening and kind of recognizing
Right.
more of what my true self was and why I was here and having that opening and allowing that forgiving myself, you know, for just being human. You know, we all
Yeah,
have
right,
stuff that
yeah.
we have to forgive. Um, and just allowing that healing to keep coming through. I did have, you know, when I was still quote dead, my spiritual guide there did do a healing on me. So I think that was like the sort of part of what was going on with my physical healing was her making sure I was kind of getting the healing that I needed. Um, but it was astounding actually to my doctors. Like they couldn't believe how quickly
Well, would
that
you w
was
yeah,
healing.
wouldn't you agree that, people that go into the hospital for a serious business, if they have a good attitude and a good spirit about life and a good feeling about life, I think that always helps get them back on their feet. And,
Yeah.
you
It
know,
seems to. Yeah. At least it makes you want to get up and like get moving, which
yeah,
is what you need to
exactly.
do.
What about, I don't know what you're doing today, what you do every day of your life, your job, this and that, but um, how has all of this actually changed what Nancy does from day to day?
I think I put a lot more focus on, first of all, maintaining my personal health, and that means physical, emotional, spiritual, all three of those. And that's really what ended up being the genesis of my book, Walking in the Light, which is um,
Oh, yeah, good point.
that's taking care of, yeah, that one. Thank you. That book was, I tried to put in all one volume exactly how I took care of myself in order to get to where I am now. And it's a threefold thing. It's physical, eating healthy as much as you can. You know, not everybody's 100%. Like today's my birthday, so I had a piece of carrot cake at lunch, and that's
Well,
okay.
happy birthday, Nancy.
Thank you. But that kind of stuff is okay. But for the most part, you know, taking care of your physical body as best as you can. It helps with your emotional health. It helps with your physical health. Getting out and hiking, like for me, I love hiking, or even just getting out in the garden or something, sitting outside. So taking care of all those aspects of my physical, mental, and spiritual health really helped kind of get me through a lot of those initial challenges after that main NDE. And it's, I have to tell you, if people keep telling me, "Well, I wish I could have an NDE so I could be like you." And you really don't, because that first, well, for me it was about 18 months. Other people it's a couple of years, some it's 7 or 8 years. It's hard. It's really hard to be here.
Mhm.
And I'm always honest with people, and I don't hold back when I say, for the first 18 months after that experience, every day I was hoping to go home. And I don't mean here home. I mean spiritual home. I really had a hard time being here. It was a real challenge to live here in the physical again, and it was hard. It was just really hard emotionally, mostly. And I asked every day, "Please take me home. What am I doing here?
Let me
I
ask
didn't
you,
mean to come back."
yeah, let me ask you this, and you answer it however you want. You were pretty much beat up.
Yeah.
I mean, just about every bone in your body was busted. Um, you had a great recovery. You came back as a much more positive person, much more enlightened, but still you're living in that physical body that got ripped up and broken apart. What what do you deal with? Do you have back problems or shoulder problems? Day to day? Do
Mm.
you have limitations? I don't expect you can go out and do 100 push-ups
I
and
can actually do
and you're
100.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
well, good for you. You
um,
know?
you know, the only thing, so my back is actually, it's, I was talking to someone about this morning. Um, my back is actually better now than it was before.
Seriously.
Yeah, I had so many back problems in my late 30s and early 40s, and nobody had been able to diagnose it. It
Mhm.
was, I mean, it was debilitating almost. Sometimes I'd go through debilitating bouts of back pain, lower back pain. And when the surgeon got in there and opened me up to install all the metal in my back, after the accident, he came out afterwards. He's like, "Did you know that you had really bad scoliosis?" I said, "Well, that
Sure.
explains all the back problems." He said, "I fixed the whole thing. You're straight now." And I actually gained like an inch in height.
Did you really?
Yeah, so
Wow.
he straightened all that, and I haven't had any back trouble since, other than ache, like sitting too long driving somewhere,
Right.
but that's just normal aches. The only thing that didn't really heal fully is my collarbone, and it's not a big deal. Don't It doesn't hurt. A lot of people have like a separated collarbone. It's not a big deal. And yeah, I can still do push-ups. So the only thing that really does plague me is headaches, and I'll go in bouts where I'll get, multiple headaches, but I have to be very cautious about taking care of the physical body. And
Right.
that really helps keep those headaches at bay.
Yeah,
If
that
I
was.
get even a little dehydrated now,
Mhm.
I'll go into 2 or 3 days of really serious headaches. But that's really the only thing that's like physically has
Mhm.
been an issue. I can still paint. I can still,
You still ride your bike?
yeah, I do, but I don't ride on the roads anymore. We've got beautiful bike lanes here and like
Right.
little off-street bike paths here in Tucson that I use.
Mhm.
I do a lot of hiking. I don't do rock climbing anymore just because um, there's because if you fall, you can take a lot of stress on your back with your harness, and I don't want to stress out that lower back any more than I have to, just if I fall.
Right.
And you fall when you're, rock climbing. So I just decided, eh, I can do other stuff. It's not that big of a deal. So that's really the only thing that I've pulled back on, only because I've chosen to, just out of good sense.
Did you tell me you had a daughter?
Mhm.
Yeah, and so you do family things too. Does
Mhm.
she live here?
She's over in San Diego.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
travel back and forth and
Yeah.
you pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool, yeah. Um, Here's a good question. Your near-death experience, that was amazing, okay? Has it taught you anything about our place in the cosmos, humanity's place in the cosmos? Because you learned a lot more than most people than I would say all the people know. Unless you had a near-death experience, unless you've been there and back. What is excuse me,
Yeah.
what has it taught you about our place in the cosmos?
The interesting thing is it's taught me a lot and I still have a lot of questions, so it's not like I've learned the secrets of the universe. I
Mhm.
wish,
Right.
because then I'd have like, 20 bestsellers by now on the
Sure.
New York Times list. But it's certainly shown me that we're much more than just this physical person sitting here on this one little planet in this ginormous universe. Like if you start thinking about the size of this universe and that you're just this one little person here, it can be daunting if you think that all you are is this one physical person here, and that's it. That there's no connection to anyone else, that you're, when you die, that's it, you're gone. What it showed me is that our consciousness is not only eternal, but it's more expansive and connected than any one of us probably understands. And I still don't, I'm still astounded when I find more and more evidence about how connected that we are. Like, being able to remote view. You've had Tracy Dolan on, and
Right, yeah.
just the fact that we can do that kind of thing and be accurate um, is astounding, and there's a consciousness aspect to it, that that consciousness, and I'm totally on Max Planck's court with this, like when
Oh,
he said consciousness is not, it's not an accessory, it's essential.
it's essential.
It's essential. And everything is really based on that consciousness. And I totally get by that. I mean, that's how I see all of this. And so that consciousness is connected really intimately throughout the universe. There's a great book that Dr. Travis Taylor, the Skinwalker Ranch
Right,
fame,
absolutely.
he wrote. I love his book, and I think it's called The Science Behind the Secret. If in it, and it's sort of out of print, but if you can find a used copy of it, and here I am on somebody, I'm plugging someone else's book, but
Well, I know that
it's,
Patricia in the background is writing this down because
yeah,
she's a fan of Dr.
it
Travis.
is. I've got that book. I think I'm going to have to buy another
Travis
copy
Taylor.
because he explains a lot of what I've been thinking about in such great terms, and he's got the science to be able to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
But he talks about the essential nature of consciousness and how connected it is, and how we can work with it, and sort of why it works the way it does, which I absolutely love. But we are connected, like being able to like when I woke, I tell people this story all the time. Like there was a time when I woke up one morning, and it'd been 3 or 4 months since I saw a friend of mine. She's quite a bit younger than me, and she and her husband they were not planning on having kids the last time I saw them, and I hadn't seen her in months. It'd probably been 3 or 4 months since I'd seen her, and I feel bad to say I hadn't even emailed her much in the intervening time. But I woke up one morning, and I lived 1,500 miles away, and I'm like, oh my God, she's pregnant. I'm not going to say her name, but she's, oh my God, why she didn't tell me she was pregnant? Why didn't she tell me she was pregnant? And I thought, well, wait a minute. Last time I talked to her, she didn't want to have kids for another 5 or 6 years. So I pinged her. I think I actually texted her and said, "Are you pregnant?"
Really?
She said, "How did you know? I just found out this morning." And I said, well, I guess we're connected in some way. So that's that conscious, it's a weird little, story, but
yeah. So your
that's,
concept of reality is completely changed.
it is. We're not just this thing stuck in a physical container, we're in a physical container, but our consciousness is sort of flowing out, it exists outside of it as well. And we're all connected to that. It's sort of like a big network of consciousness. That's how I look at it right now,
Yeah.
anyway. And
So let me back up a minute.
yep,
Dr. Travis Taylor, what was the name of his book?
I think it was called The Science Behind the Secret, or The Science of the Secret.
Okay.
It's been out for probably 10 years or so.
Has it really?
Yeah, maybe longer. And it's out of print. I think I had to find a used copy
Did you?
on
Okay.
Amazon. But it is out there, and I can supply you with that link later if you
So
still can't
back
find
to
it.
your thank you. So back to your comment about reality. I mean, in your near-death experience, time was way different. It
Oh yeah,
wasn't linear like it is here, is it? Was it?
no. No, time didn't pass the same way, and it may have passed, but it was at a very different rate. I personally didn't notice like this flow of time at all. So I'm still on the fence about that as far as like in that spiritual state of existence. But I liken it to like if you're, let's say, for anybody that, like, when they were kids, they used to have these train setups. My dad was totally into model trains, so he would, at
I
Christmas
still
time,
am.
he would set up these model trains around the Christmas tree. And if you're like if you stand up and just look down on that little train town, with the little
Right.
buildings and stuff, you can speed those trains up and slow them down, and speed them up and slow them down, but you standing above it aren't really existing at that level of activity. And you can change, that changes, and you can kind of access any time on that little circle if you want to. And that's really how I look at it. Like here, we are in a flow of time, and that's still very, I have yet to hear a physicist be able to really give me a good explanation as to why time flows. I don't think I've heard one yet. There may be one out there. I may just not have heard about it. But we're in this flow of time, or the apparent flow of time. The apparent flow of time really isn't anything that is a part of like the equations of Einstein, in
Right.
all of his theories. It's not really a part of it, but we still experience it. We experience the night and day, we experience, getting older and all that. But in that spiritual state of existence, we're like pulled out of that. We're functioning at a different rate, if we're at a rate at all. It's like, um instead of watching, this time flow by like it's a river, from when you're on the other side, it's like looking at a frozen lake. You can kind of look at all different points of time in your life,
And
and
you can
they're
go to
all
those points whenever you want?
yeah, they're all equally valid, and they're all acceptable.
So you
Um,
could go back to your childhood?
Yeah, I mean, they didn't put me like when I was put back into my body, I didn't go back there, but I could
No.
certainly relive those aspects of that time, and I did. That's the whole life review, when you're able to access those different moments and go right back in there and re-experience them, but with a different perspective, and see it from kind of all sides instead of just the limited view you had, when you were in that moment. And it's pretty magical to be able to do that.
I bet. It's kinda hard for us who have never experienced anything, well, not in our conscious memory right now. Time has always been linear since the day of our earliest memories. To step outside of linear time and become as you were in this near-death experience, um, did it and maybe this isn't a question you can answer, but when you were there having your near death experience, did it seem natural? Did it seem like, yeah, I know how to go do this. I know how to go do that. You didn't have to
Yeah.
walk here or walk there. How did you move? I mean, when you went from here to there, I mean, what's
Well,
it?
there was, I did have some help. I did have a guide. Especially, there were times when I really didn't know what to do or where to go, or how to think about things. And so we always have the amount of assistance that we need.
Mhm.
But it was pretty natural. Like, once I was there and remembered that that was home, and I remembered that that was home almost right away as soon as I was there. Once I remembered that that was home, it was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, now I get it." I sort of
So all
remembered.
so all the rules of reality came rushing in, and you said, "Oh yeah, yeah, this is how we do it."
Yeah, and I also remembered, startlingly enough, that this existence here in the physical is but one tiny part of reality. It's only a small part.
That must
It's
have
a
been a huge moment of clarity for you.
it was a big deal to think about, "Oh, yeah, that life on Earth, that was important, but it was only a small little it's a small little thing." Physical reality is only this small little bit
Right.
of reality, and while it is important, it's almost, I don't like using the word dreamlike,
Mhm.
but that's how it felt. Like, this was the dream and that was reality. This felt like some weird hallucination that I'd had.
There's probably a lot of people that would agree with you on that one. So talking about consciousness, okay, there are people that say that consciousness is non-local.
Mhm.
It doesn't require this physical, the gray matter up here to function within the consciousness. And so the nature of consciousness, Nancy, to you must have really changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought, beforehand, I thought it was just some, an unexplainable state of being that was produced by the brain. And after, especially, I learned right away during the accident itself. People can go back and listen to the first interview,
Mhm.
but there was a point during the accident where my consciousness was separated, where I had a part of me that was in my body and a part of me that was outside of my body. And those were two very different states of consciousness. The one in my body, what I call it like the human level or the animal level of consciousness, just the
Right.
survival. But that other part was the soul level or higher self level. And that was my first clue. I remember thinking, I'm laying there, on the pavement trying to figure out what to do, and this vehicle had just hit me, and one of the first things I thought of was, that was really weird, and that right there is going to change the way I look at the world. And then I, went off into pain mode and being scared and all that. But there was a moment there of clarity, like, this was important. I need to remember this. And that showed me that that the body has its own level of basic functioning awareness. It's just super basic, but that higher self level of awareness is that non-local eternal consciousness that isn't produced
From the
here.
brain.
It resides, part of it resides for a while in this body for sure, like a newscaster signal would come through
Yeah.
your television set. That's sort of how I look at it. It's like our consciousness is sort of being projected into this body for a while, but it isn't produced here. Like that, the news, like when Dan Rather or Mike Wallace or whatever was on television, they weren't in your TV. That was just a projection
That
of
was,
their.
yeah.
So that's how I look at it now. And it certainly is not produced by the brain. It may be residing here. There may be some
This
tie
is kind of like the
into.
receiver here
Right.
and the speaker.
It's how our consciousness interacts with this physical reality.
Let me ask you this. While you were in this near-death experience, could you explain why we're here? Why we are why we are humans living in this three-dimensional reality? What is the point?
That's a good question that I don't know that I can answer. I mean, just on a small scale, there seems to be, for each individual soul, has reasons for choosing to incarnate or to have an experience here in this 3D reality that we're in right now. And there are other places in this 3D reality. It doesn't have to be on Earth, it can be somewhere else in this 3D reality, but each soul has its own reasons. There are things that we can learn. And we were talking about this earlier. I'm not one of those people who necessarily believes that all souls were created all at once and everybody's like super advanced. I think souls are continuously being generated or born or created. And so we have a lot of learning to do. And some of us want to just experience this physical dimension, this 3D, the 3D, well, 4D if you count time. And we want to experience it. Some of us want to just know what it feels like to have a family and to eat ice cream or have chocolate. I
Oh,
know Anita Morgiani talks about eating chocolate, that's her thing. So
I
we
like a good Oreo, How are
yeah,
you gonna know?
for me it's carrot cake at my birthday,
Yeah,
so
there you
that's
go.
we all have those things that we want to experience, but there are some things that we can really learn here that's may take longer to learn somewhere else or in a different dimension or a different energy state. Because I think reality truly is a lot more complicated that I can wrap my little puny brain around right now. But at least in this physical reality, we can learn how to, like, one of my lessons is how do you be calm and present and loving in a place like this, where it's not so easy to be that way, where you feel sort of cut off from your spiritual team,
Yeah.
and where you're not really on your own, but where you sort of feel like you're on your own. How can you really pull those lessons of connection and love and kindness and compassion into your day-to-day existence. It's sort of like taking your finals in, like in
Right.
a university class or something. Like, let's put it all together and do this thing all at once in the hardest environment that you can think of. And if you pass this test, then you get to, do something else next time around. But you can learn so much here in a short amount of time. I think that's why some of us choose to come into this, three physical dimensional reality. But on a bigger level, I don't know. I mean, I keep joking with people, like, if I get another NDE,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask to go see whoever's in charge here. And I've got a list of questions now that I know what to ask. I didn't know what to ask before.
I've
Now I
often
do.
I've often wondered, people that have NDEs, when we're here in our normal three-dimensional world, we are individuals, and nobody else knows what I'm thinking, and nobody else knows what I'm feeling unless I express myself. Now, if you have an NDE and you're in an entirely different dimensional reality, do you feel the same reaction? Do you feel the same emotions? Do you react the same to other people as you do here? I mean, is do
I
you
think
still feel like a private individual on that side, on the other
it's
side?
sort of both. It's sort of private yet connected. And the thing is, you can sort of open yourself up a little bit to connecting with
Okay.
I call them my spiritual team, those people that are helping you or around you. You can open yourself up and just allow these energy connections to be made. But then you can say, no, I'm done. We can close down now. And you can be either or. When you're connected, though, there was a time, and it's in my book, Awakenings from the Light. But I think it was if you go to the chapter about taking care of the earth, I think that's where this story comes in. But it was my main guide was there. Yep, there we go. I think it's one of the middle chapters, but anyway, taking care of the earth. And she was talking to me about, the importance of caring for this place called Earth, even though, and I was questioning her about this, like, well, it's not real, is it? Like, I mean, I already gone through that
Right,
point
yeah.
where I remembered that was sort of a dream. Like, so why is that important? She said, well, it is reality. It's reality while you're here. And it is part of reality. It's part of our bigger, grander reality. It's just a smaller part of it. And that's where, it's like a classroom or a big school or something. And, you got to take care of it. But when I was pinging them on that, and I start to go into them, you'll notice. Now, I was with one main person, one guide, one female guide for the most part, but I knew that I was surrounded by probably several hundred others whom I
Mhm.
couldn't see. They could communicate with me once in a while when it was really important, and it was like when when they opened up, it was overwhelming. And this was one of the topics that they opened up about, was caring for this reality that we're in, this earth that we're
Right,
on.
yeah.
And it was like when that emotion came through, they're not attached to those emotions, but they do feel them. You do feel that stuff. You feel sadness or remorse or whatever, but you don't get all attached to it like we do. Like, we can ruminate on being guilt ridden here for years, that doesn't have, you feel it and let it go. But I could feel their sadness about certain things, like, the way that we have polluted certain areas of our planet. And it was like mind blowing to feel all that coming through. And I had to shut it off. It's like I had to shut it down because it was
It's
just
too
too
much.
much. So there's a lot of leeway to be able to turn that on and turn it off. But you still do have a sense of being a self, but also at the same time connected, to this
Right.
greater network.
Well, Nancy, I've got 1,000 questions. What is it like to transition from this reality to the next? When you're in the other reality, is there a sense of a larger source? Do you feel like you have the same relationship with others? But we're down to 5 minutes here, and I have a question here. How do you maintain your sense of peace and calm given all that's what we were talking about, given all that is actually happening in this world, knowing what you know because you had this near death experience? I would be livid. I mean, I
Yeah.
am livid half the time, and I have to pull myself back and say, calm down. Knowing what you know, how do you stay calm and just think, oh well, the heck with it. I'm not going to be here, and I know where I'm going to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, that's really not the attitude I try to cultivate, because that's basically checking out. And
Right? Yeah.
and I don't like doing that, but at least as far as that higher perspective goes, I kind of look at it a couple of different ways. I don't Once in a while it's not that I get angry, it's more like I'm sort of not really disappointed either, because that's a really strong word, but maybe disappointed a little bit, or impatient. Like, the fact that we are not working as a cohesive humanity is our
Exactly.
biggest challenge. And that's the biggest hurdle that we've got a lot of other stuff going on that are real. It's really at a lower level than that. But overall, that's our big challenge. And
Yeah,
and I
given the fact
know,
yeah, given the fact that we could escalate into a nuclear confrontation with each other.
yeah, pretty
That's
easily.
that's a very real possibility.
Yeah,
I personally don't think it's gonna happen, but it could.
it easily could, and
Yeah,
and that is a possibility, and, I do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen.
right.
So, I certainly do as much as I can individually with people, but I do a lot of personal, like, meditation. I do a
Mhm.
lot of, um it's not really meditation, it's more like intention work. It's really trying to bring that energy of that divine presence to just my local area. That's as much as I feel I can do, and just be a point, like almost like a point source for it here, and
Right.
hope that it
Yeah.
gets out. But I do some local, you know, activities with people, and talk and do talks, like especially like this.
That was gonna be the tenor of my next question is what can other people do to, you know and can you give them any kind of advice as to calm
Yeah,
down and, don't get so worked up about things, but, I mean, these are serious matters going on in the world today, obviously, there's no doubt about
yeah.
it. But what advice would you give to people to calm down and try to seek peace and
Yeah, well, first take care of your physical body as much as you can. It really does help. I know people
yes.
poo-poo that, but it really, if you're not eating a healthful diet,
There you go.
if you're eating sugar all the time, or drinking soda, and having all of this really junk food, it's
Mhm.
really going to affect your personal outlook, and it's a big deal. It affects a lot of things. So try to take care of that. That's certainly one good thing you can do. Meditate, or do something like meditation, even if it's gardening, or getting out for a walk, or doing some activity where you sort of zone out. Like for me, I do active meditation, but I also, when I paint kind of in an altered, like when I go to the easel, I'm sort of in an altered state. So for me, that's like a big form of meditation. So find something like that you can do. The other thing that really helps people is get out of your own head and help somebody else. Volunteer if you can. A lot of people don't maybe have the expendable income to donate to a cause, and that's fine. But maybe go out and spend an hour a week or 2 hours a week helping someone else. It could even be a neighbor, like, sometimes I help my neighbors out, or in other places I've lived, I've shoveled my neighbors' driveways when I've had snow. I don't have
Right.
snow here anymore, but when I lived in Colorado, I would do that, or I'd look out for my neighbors or take them to the grocery store. I had a lot of elderly neighbors that I would befriend.
Oh, yeah,
So
that's great. I mean,
doing things like get you out of yourself and getting you connected to other people in some way, even if it's, and this is hard for me, going to the local shelter and walking the dogs. I love dogs. I'm always afraid I'm going to come home with 10, but go volunteer and help somebody else. And that will really help you kind of get out of that rumination in your mind. And in both of my books, Awakenings from the Light and Walking in the Light, I've got a lot of good exercises in addition to that people
mhm,
can do to help kind of calm down. And but what's best for me is that I keep in mind what I was shown for humanity's future, and it's really beautiful. So I know that we can achieve it.
that's good.
But and it might be a little bit of a rocky road getting there, but I've seen that end result, and it's amazing. So I know we're going to get there. Um, but
That's
so I
great.
try to help as much as I can, just kind of nudge people
Patricia,
along.
thank you, Nancy. Patricia, do we still have Nancy's websites on a slide that we can pop up? Do we still have that? I know we had it last time. You had a couple of websites. One
Yeah.
of them featured your amazing artistry, and we could talk about that. Okay, let's list. Nancy, you're coming back for number 3. Okay. Um, I want to talk more about what moves you to make these really nice drawings and paintings. I also have a number of other questions, and I know Patricia does because I know she's backstage writing things down. And we could talk about this stuff some more. So, are you willing to come back to a number 3?
Oh, sure. Yep.
Because we can talk and talk, and I love this. This is a very big part of why I even started, or I should say, we started the whole dark window thing, and that is humanity looks through a dark window, and there's light if we just look in the right place. And people like you are bringing that light. You're giving us hope and reason for answers to a lot of things. So,
Cool.
yeah, we're done here. We're out of time. There you go. Walking in the light
Yep.
and talking about how you help people. So this was a wonderful, again, another wonderful interview. Nancy, I appreciate you coming back. And we're out of time again, like I said. So I want to thank everyone for joining us here. And on behalf of Nancy, my guest, myself, Jim Mann, and my helper behind the scenes, Patricia, thank you, everyone. This is Dark Window. I am Jim Mann, your host. Please join us again and have a wonderful day. Thank you very much.